Welcome to Toronto Mic'd, Lee Aaron.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Whereabouts in the great country of Canada do we find you today?
I live in the Vancouver area. That's all
Okay.
I'm going to say.
Well, no. What is your home address, Lee Aaron? I need to know. That just lets me know that even if there was not a global pandemic, we'd probably be doing this episode via Zoom.
Well, yeah, you're in Toronto. I'm out here. I used to live in Toronto though, and I love Toronto. I miss my friends. I miss the nightlife and the cosmopolitan aspect of Toronto, but I don't miss the traffic and the humidity in the summer, I have to say.
I was going to ask you, why would you ever leave? I mean, so how long has it been since you lived in Toronto?
I moved to Vancouver in 1995.
Oh,
I
wow.
still go, pre-COVID, I still go back and forth quite a bit to Toronto and see my friends and play shows. And my guitar player lives in Toronto. So
Now,
yeah.
I become good friends with Biff Naked, and she lived in Vancouver for something like 35 years, and now she's very, very happy living in Mimico here in Toronto. So
Okay.
so she's back. She's here now, but I guess we've lost Lee Aaron to the West Coast.
Well, yeah, that's the way it is right now. I moved out here, and then I met my husband, and we have two school age. I still have school age kids, right? So
Right.
I'm pretty much tied here until they're like 30.
I know.
There you go.
I know what that's like. I want to shout out a super fan of yours named Gordon Enright.
Yes.
Well, we know him better here as Midtown Gord. So shout out to Midtown Gord because he really helped make this happen. So I just want to thank Gord for the fact that I'm now talking to the legendary Lee Aaron. So thank you, Gord.
Yes, Gord is every time I scroll through my like Facebook or my Instagram feed, he has like the little badge. It says top fan, top fan, and he's a lovely guy. I've met him several times. Whenever I'm playing out east, he's always at shows, and he posts sometimes the funniest memes and the funniest content that I'm reposting because he makes me laugh almost every day. So
he's gonna love hearing this. He might
yeah.
isolate this soundbite and make it his ringtone. So Lee Aaron saying he's a funny guy. So good stuff.
Yeah.
Now, Lee, I have to say, here we are meeting on Zoom, and I see the name. It doesn't say Lee Aaron; it says Karen. So I have a question when I talk to, because you're really a Karen, of course.
Yeah, but lately that name has a little bit of a bad reputation.
Hey,
so I'd rather not.
That's where I'm going. Straight up, you're the first Karen I've had on Toronto Mic'd since Like, how do you feel that people essentially use your given name, your first name, as a catch-all for, I don't know how to surmise it, but like racist white woman? Like how does it feel to have your name used in that context?
Well, I don't personalize it, although I've made a couple of jokes on social media about it. But yeah, it is. When I was shopping for Halloween costumes with my children this year, there was actually a T-shirt in the store, and it was a black T-shirt, and it just said, can I speak to the manager? And it was like it was a Karen shirt, right? And had been, and I was like, wow, couldn't it be like Ivanka or Melania or Tiffany? I think those are much better names than Karen. But anyway.
So I feel bad for all you quality Karens out there because this is unfair to you. You lived a whole life with the name Karen, and now this nonsense has to tarnish the good name. So I feel bad for you guys.
Well, there you go.
Speaking of West Coast, so you're in Vancouver area, and in White Rock is Neil Morrison. Now we know here in Toronto, we know him better as Brother Bill. Used to be on Edge 102. When he found out you were coming on, he wrote me this note. He says, the pride of Central Peel Secondary in Brampton. So I guess you lived for a while in Brampton as a youngster.
I did. I went to high school there, and yeah. So I think it's probably long since taken down, but I'm on the honor roll somewhere there. I was a bit of a nerd, I have to be honest. But I was really, deeply involved in musical theater. It was a great musical theater school. Every year we did a fantastic production, and I was involved from a very young age in almost all of them throughout the years, and yeah, it was a great school to go to. I had some wonderful teachers. In fact, I had a music teacher. Um, I had two different music teachers that I loved. One, I think, was Mr. Vanderberg. He was who taught me. I mean, I was in the jazz band and the concert band, and I played E flat alto sax. But I also had a great music teacher called Mr. Robinson, and he actually had a creative course that delved into composition and songwriting. And at that time, I won't tell you how many years ago, I had a 4-track TIAC machine. And we all remember those quite well on tape. And I was in a band and I was very young at that point in time. And I did recording and composing and compiling and bouncing tracks. And so I started doing that when I was like 15 years old. So yeah, like, can you say geek?
Well, this leads us to the first mind-blowing fun fact, and this won't be news to the gourds of the world who adore you and know everything about you. But for the casual fan who probably just learned you're really a Karen, Lee Aaron, like sort of like Alice Cooper, and that'll tie in with a Bob Ezrin fun fact later, but kind of like Alice Cooper was the name of the band, and then Vincent Furnier just started calling himself Alice Cooper. Lee Aaron was the name of your first band.
Correct. Yeah.
So
and
you just like the name so much, you said, I'm going to start billing myself as Lee Aaron. Is that how that plays out?
No, not really. I didn't go into it thinking I was going to become synonymous with Lee Aaron, but because I was, let me explain. My very first band when I was in high school, I played keyboards 50% of the time. I played saxophone. I mean, we covered Supertramp when I was like 15 years old, and I was doing, the solos. And the guitar player George Bernhardt in that band, he was from a sister high school a few miles away, and he sang half the material as well. So I really wasn't the front person. It was just I was more like Christine McVie in that band, and but we decided we wanted a band name that was a name like actually, Max Webster was the first band I ever saw in my high school. I was like, they were so amazing. Those guys, when I saw Kim Mitchell walk on stage in like high heels with tights, green tights, and like this crazy hair, and, I was like, yes, nerds of the world unite. I can relate to this, right? But anyway, I wasn't the front person, but when we got taken on by our first manager, I was 17 years old, just out of high school. And the first thing he did was, he's like, no, we're not hiding you back there behind the keyboards. He pulled me out front, stuck me in front of a microphone. He said, you need to be the lead singer in this band. This is how we're going to market it. And he took me to see Bette Midler in The Rose.
Oh, yes, of course.
Like, here, you need to learn some stage moves like this. So for me, much like Alice Cooper, I was like, okay, so this rock and roll thing, it's theater too, right?
Right.
And that's sort of how I ended up being pulled out front. But once I was the front person and a female, people just went, that's Lee Aaron. And that's kind of how the whole thing evolved into me being the front person of the band. And,
oh, that's amazing, because it's just such a fun fact. It's great to hear you reference Max Webster, because I recently had Kim Mitchell on this program, but just last week I spoke to Rick Ringer, who was a longtime DJ on 104.5 Chum FM for a long time in the 70s and 80s, and he was very close with the guys at Max Webster, and we were talking. But my guest tomorrow is Erica M from Much Music, who also worked for Max Webster. Like, Max Webster is really having its moment on Toronto Mic'd episodes, so I'm glad you could shout them out.
That's great. That's good. Well, they were great then. Kim is still greght now, right?
So. I know he actually and he lives, I mentioned Biff Naked moved to Mimico. That's where Max is living right now. So there's a lot of great musicians kind of in that neck of the woods here in Toronto. But okay, I digress. Now I want to bring us to 1982, because you work with some pretty big names like Rick Emmett and some others. I want you to tell me these stories, because I'm going to play a song from this, but just tell me a little bit about how the Lee Aaron project comes to be, because you're still a teenager.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I had written quite a few songs when I was a kid, but I mean, they were, I wasn't Steve Winwood when I was 16 years old. I was this girl floundering about trying to figure out how to be a good songwriter. And, my first manager did do some great things as well. And he put me together with Rick Santers. He put me together with the guys in Moxie and Frank Soda. And I composed some material with those guys. And that's why it's called The Project, because it was basically me writing with these older, much more experienced rock songwriters. And it was a great experience for me. I learned a lot about much more about composition and putting together a great song. And of course, my voice was my voice. And he facilitated the entire recording of the first album with all of these different notable players.
Right.
And that first album was made for like $7,000, I think, mixed, mastered, and recorded for that amount of money. And but it's a seminal record. A lot of people still love it, and it was fun making it. So.
I was going to say, still sounds great. Now, specifically, I'm going to ask about one song. Okay. Who wrote Under Your Spell?
I wrote that song with a gentleman who was actually playing in my band at that time, a guy named Dave Applin. And he was a guitar player that I was working with currently. He was in my live band. And yeah, we wrote that song together. But because I actually didn't write anything with Rick, but my manager had a relationship with Rick Emmett and asked him, would he come in and sing on this? And so Rick added background vocals on this track, and what a voice, hey?
Well, here, let me play a little bit of Under Your Spell, and then I'm going to hit you with some real talk and ask you a follow-up question. So sure. Here's a great jam from very early Lee Aaron days. Here's a little bit of Under Your Spell. Wow. Okay, listen to those vocals. Let me bring it down so I can hear your voice. But let me ask you straight up. Okay, so do you think possibly Nick Gilder borrows from this great jam because he writes The Warrior, which we know by Patti, I think it was for the band Scandal featuring Patti Smith. But do you hear the similarities?
I have never been asked that question.
I ask original questions over here, Lee, but there's a lot of similarities. I can see Lee thinking.
I don't know what to say because that song was definitely a bigger hit than Under Your Spell. But it's interesting. Well, now that you're pointing it out, yeah, I can hear similarities. But wow.
Well, let me give some props. So. I was chatting with my friend, and listeners of the program know Mark Weisblot, and we were talking about this, and this came from that conversation. So shout out to Mark Weisblot from 1236.ca. But it's just interesting, and all these years later, because Nick is Canadian. Well, yeah, he's from Vancouver. Like he was in Vancouver.
His wife is an amazing photographer, and she's taken many, many photographs of me in the past.
Anyway, I'm not trying to cause any trouble here, but if you see him, if COVID ever ends and you see him at a dinner party, you can have a wink, wink, FYI. Anyway, it's just a few similarities here. So,
well, you know what I'm doing when I get off this call now? I'm going to go listen to that again. I never thought about that, but I think that a lot of the material around that time frame had a similar kind of rock pop. Right. I mean, that is the Lee Aaron thing. It's like, hard pop with big guitars, right?
Wow. Well, you sounded great there. And then a couple years later, now, I always tell people who's coming up on Toronto Mike. And then just today I had a few conversations and I said, Oh, at 2:00, I'm talking to Lee Aaron. They all said the same two words back to me right away, like the same two words. So let's just play another song from another album, and then we'll pick it up after a few seconds of this one. Get a slow burn here, so I feel like I should be talking up this opening part with an intro, but we'll just let it kind of take us in here. And this, of course, is from 1984. I'm not going to try to hit the post. Forget it. Although you could.
She comes like thunder, rising from the ground. She'll bring you under. She moves without a sound. She holds a passion like no other could. No one should talk, the word is understood. Riding electric song. So get a ticket, you just got to get on. Metal Green. Metal
Yeah, you tell somebody you're going to talk to Lee Aaron, and those were the two words I'd hear back more often than not is Metal Queen. So it's so tell us now, 1984. This leads to this. So tell me about like the success of this song, and if you can speak to the deal with Attic Records, if you don't mind.
Well, you sort of want the industry scoop, or
Yeah, no, I love
looking for here?
Inside Baseball is good here. This is where we dive into the details. So yeah, give us the industry scoop, of course.
So we had recorded this album in its entirety, completed, produced by Paul Gross, who was, I believe, one of the owners of Phase One Studios in Toronto at that time. And the album was written and completed, and we recorded the album on spec. So we owed the studio money. And we were trying to get a deal with a US label, and we actually had interest from quite a few labels in the States, Geffen, Atlantic, EMI. And we flew down to Los Angeles and we did a showcase at the Troubadour, the infamous Troubadour. And the next day, the phone was ringing off the hook, a lot of American labels. But my manager at the time had entered into a partnership with Eddie Leffler, who was Van Halen's manager. And Ed said to my manager, don't talk to anybody. I have to go to England, make them wait. I will talk to them when I get back. And he went to England, Ed, and slipped on some ice and threw out his back. And he ended up laid up in the hospital in London for weeks and weeks and weeks. And in the meantime, and I mean, the end result of the story is a positive note. I ended up signing with a Canadian label. The studio was pressuring for money. We had to figure out a solution. And so we had interest from Canadian labels as well. And Attic had come to the table. And again, I was a kid still, so I'm not quite sure of all the details. But Attic had expressed quite a bit of interest and they were going to do great things for us. So we ended up signing with Attic. One of the motivations was they were offering us an advance and we had to play back the studio. So that's how that happened. But I ended up entering into a multi-album deal with Attic Records in Canada. And the rest is history.
Well, maybe we skip ahead then before we go back. So maybe we jump, it's sort of like in Pulp Fiction, they, jump time frames here, because on your own website. So this is something on, I literally read about this on leeaaron.com. So
you did, you must've been doing some deep digging.
There's a whole story about, I'll read a bit of it and then maybe we can hear it in your own words, but as the most prominent artist on the Attic label, Her records were used unsuccessfully as a bargaining chip by the company to acquire a distribution deal for the entire roster. And when that failed, the label tried to get funding to implement the US division, again holding the Lee Aaron records out of the US market with plans to make her debut, her the debut artist on the new label. But that idea ultimately fails as well. And there's basically, it sounds like this is, a lot of us just want to hear the songs and see you live and rock out, right? And then this is the stuff, though. It sounds like there was some difficulties in the with the record label that that led to you leaving and starting your own label in like 1992. So like, could you speak to that maybe, like how it ends with Attic and that turmoil?
Well, I'm not here to say anything negative about anybody. I mean, I have a relationship with Al Mayer to this day. We talk, we exchange messages through social media, and he's a lovely man. And I have really like him and respect him a lot. My webmaster tends to find information in various places and pull it and add it. It's been written somewhere, so it's there. One of the reasons, one of my former manager, Steve Propass, who's unfortunately no longer with us, but one of the bones of contention that my former management had was that by signing a Canadian deal, and I'm not the only Canadian artist who's had this issue, when you sign with a Canadian label that owns your foreign licensing rights, so they own you for the world. If you get a foreign licensing in another territory, they own the master to license to other territories. There were multiple times throughout my career where it seemed like we were this close to getting a proper US release, especially on Body Rock, which was almost triple platinum in Canada.
Right.
Some Girls Do was platinum in Canada. We had a lot of interest, but there were various behind the scenes industry complications that prevented that from happening. It wasn't just as simple as, we want Lee Aaron, let's sign. I didn't have the ability to sign myself independently to a US label. And I know that Attic at one point was trying to get a roster deal. And I know that also that they were trying to start Attic America, which would have been fantastic for me, because I would have certainly been one of the more prominent artists on the label at that time, right, for release in America, but they needed a certain amount of funding, startup funding, to start that. And it just never ended up happening. And unfortunately, once your record is kind of like had its heyday in the sun, its year of being popular, and then is no longer popular, people aren't as interested in you anymore. So that's what I'll say. So I ended up without a proper US record deal ever.
So was Body Rock never released in the US?
That's correct. It was not.
Okay. Yeah. Anyways, and like you said, that you've said enough, and I appreciate you being candid here. I know that's the other side of the business side of things, and but I do appreciate you sharing that much, because I can imagine there'd be frustration when you have those songs that we love on Body Rock, and I'm going to play one in a moment. Are not just great songs to Canadian ears. Like, it's not like there's some, this, you know what I mean? There's that's a sound that would be loved, I would think, just as much by California ears and American ears. But
well, ironically, I have a Christmas album that I really just released. I've been an independent artist since '92.
Right.
But a lot of my sales are in the US. So I do have fans down there that have somehow discovered me. Well, we can talk more about that later.
Because I'm definitely gonna play some of the Christmas music, and then we're gonna talk about you leaving Attic Records and starting your own label. But here's a good chance, before I get to Body Rock, maybe ask you if you could just share a little bit about the role of Bob Ezrin in your career. I guess this is the 1985 album called The Wild.
Yeah. Well, the way that Bob Ezrin got involved with that album is that, again, we were in the studio producing the third album with Paul Gross again, who had produced Metal Queen. Right. And Bob we were like in Studio A and he was in Studio B, and he was doing, I don't remember the actual name of it, but he was doing a project with a whole bunch of notable US artists. Like it was like a hard rock compilation thing. It had Alice Cooper, Dee Snider, Lita Ford, a bunch of very notable hard rock artists from the States involved in it. And he just kept coming over into Studio A and popping his ear in and listening to what we were doing. He was very curious in who I was. He really liked my voice.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Paul Gross had a bad racquetball accident. The racquetball hit him right in the eye, and he was off for like 6 weeks. He was out of commission, and we were in a position where we needed to finish this album. And my understanding from the label was that Bob came into Attic and said, let me finish producing this record. And then the next thing you know, I was doing an album with Bob Ezrin.
Wow.
And yeah, you know, what a coup for me, right? Like, I mean, here's this guy who's done Pink Floyd and Alice Cooper and Meatloaf and all these amazing, amazing artists. And I have to be honest, I was really intimidated at first working with him. I was like 22 years old, and I'm working with one of the world's biggest producers. But I learned a lot from working with him. I learned a lot about, you know, vocal technique and breathing. He showed me a lot of breathing stuff to do in the studio, how to use my voice in various different ways. And that way it was, you know, definitely, that's my phone. Sorry. Should have turned my ringer off. Yeah, learn my voice, use my voice in a lot of different ways. 1 sec, I'm going to turn.
That's okay. Yeah. Take care of that if you need to. That's okay. We're not live anywhere. It's all good.
All right.
Okay. Tell Bob
yeah, so
Ezrin, call him back later.
I learned a lot. I learned a lot from working with Bob, and you know, one of definitely a treasured experience. I've really been fortunate to work with some amazing producers, and I've learned so much from them.
Oh no, very cool. Like very recently, friends of this program, there are children's entertainers called Splash and Boots, and my kids are just that kind of. I'm sad because I have 4 kids, but my 2 youngest kids have aged out of the Splash and Boots demo. Like now they're. I know it's a sad time, right? So there's no more Treehouse TV here, but I just took note that Bob Ezrin got Alice Cooper to sing on a Splash and Boots song. And this was just released. And I just thought that was kind of cool that, you know, Bob could get Alice Cooper to sing on this, you know, children's entertainment duo that are here in Toronto. But okay, I digress. So shout out to Bob. I want to play the massive hit all of us Much Music watchers saw over and over again, and we never got tired of it. So let's kick out that jam.
1, 2, 3,
Pick up that drumstick. I had to play a little more of this one. I mean, it's like you got to give the people the hits, right, Lee? Here we go. Okay, you alluded to the commercial success, but like, what's it like for you? You're still very young. I mean, you're still very young today as I speak to you, but you were really young when Body Rock gets released in '89. Like, I mean, so many hits in the only country I care about, Canada. Like, what's it like for you in this, as all this is kind of happening with What You Do to My Body, and then of course Hands On, and all the other hits that come off of Body Rock?
I mean, it was weird because, you know, on my, how do I explain it? You know, earlier, pre-Body Rock, I mean, you got to, right around the time of Body Rock, we had like Seth Jordan and Alana Miles coming out as well, right?
Right.
So they were kind of, the world, or Canada as we know it, was finally ready for women who were doing a slightly more passionate and aggressive form of music. But prior to that, I couldn't get played on radio. It was really hard. I remember driving across Canada on Call of the Wild with my promotions rep from Attic, Ralph Alfonso, and trying to get Call of the Wild played. And we were just like, you know, like, it's way too heavy for Canadian radio. They just wouldn't touch it. And so it was kind of, you know, I think Only Human on the fourth album kind of opened that door because they chose to release something that was more of a ballad fare for a single. But it was kind of like, wow, you know, great. Like finally, right. I was enjoying my sort of time in the sun, right, in Canada. Because prior to that, I had spent a lot of time pounding the pavement, touring Europe, you know, because I was appreciated over there. And
well, tell me a bit about that. I had Danko Jones on the program, and he straight up said he's a much bigger deal in Europe than he is in Canada. And he can tour Europe. And I mean, he's, you know, the metrics will tell you he's right. He gets a lot more airplay and a lot more love and a lot more, you know, people at it. He could play bigger venues in Europe than he can in Canada. So what was it like? You're playing, I mean, UK, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, you know?
All those places. I played with Danko a couple years ago, actually, in Sweden. So yeah, we had my third album, Call of the Wild, which is still beloved over there. It didn't do hardly anything in Canada, but we were on a small label called Roadrunner out of Belgium. They were a small label at that time out of Belgium called Roadrunner. Mm-hmm. And we got on the Bon Jovi tour in the spring of that year.
Nice.
And we toured with Bon Jovi. And by the end of that tour, that was a 6-week tour. That album exploded. In 6 weeks, we'd sold over 100,000 albums.
Oh, my apologies. I'll bring that way down. I slipped my finger, like a trigger finger here. That's Hands On, of course. Another, I would call that a Much Music smash because just like my body. But we're going to get to Much Music in a moment. But please talk more about Europe before I bring it back.
We were doing really well over there. So we spent quite a bit I spent a lot of time between 1985 and 1992 touring over there. But yeah, when Body Rock hit big in Canada, and I think a lot of that too had to do with the fact that Much Music was coming into its heyday as well. And artists were, you know, finding a way, if you could sell your music with visuals as well and interject some of your own personality into that, which video provided a medium to be able to do that. It was even that more powerful. And so it was kind of weird. It's like I was like the it girl on Much Music for a couple of years too.
Without a doubt. I mean, I lived this, and I was going to comment, like, you know, video is a visual presentation and you're an aesthetically pleasing artist, Lee Aaron. Is that, can I say that?
I suppose.
So, I mean, video agreed with you, and you looked great, but you sounded great. You know, it's not, you weren't just a visual presentation. You sounded fantastic. And I mean, it's funny that tomorrow's guest is Erica M, because I wonder how many times Erica M, as a VJ in Much Music, threw to one of the videos from Body Rock. Like, you know, it's
yeah. It was ubiquitous, right? It was everywhere at that time.
That's great. So how important, you know, do you think? I mean, Q107 was playing these songs, of course. I'm speaking locally here in Toronto because you're on Toronto Mic right now, so that's all I really know. But I mean, how important was it? And you mentioned double platinum, or maybe I just read you were certified double platinum in Canada. But how key was it that you could, you know, be in living rooms across this vast country because Much Music put these videos on high rotation?
What exactly is the question?
Oh, I guess
It's
uh,
like-
like I know you already kind of referenced this,
Yeah.
but like how significant really? Like I can imagine it was extremely significant that you had such high rotation of your videos on Much Music, which let people in like in Newfoundland, and in Edmonton, all kind of have constant access to your big hits on Body Rock. So like no question, I guess I'm looking for
Well, it opened up
comment
touring.
further.
I was touring across Canada. And we went, from being sort of a nightclub act to a very large nightclub slash arena act, right? At that point in time. So there was that. There was all of a sudden, it was like all of the press that would never talk to me before, I was, their favorite now. It was kind of, honestly, for me, it was a little bit of a lesson in how incredibly fickle the media can be as well, right? It's sort of like, oh, well, that's popular, let's jump on that. All of a sudden, I was getting the respect and the attention that I, had hoped for before, right? And and everybody was interested, but I couldn't go into the grocery store and buy a toilet paper. It was like, I was getting recognized everywhere. So that was a little bit hard because I am a bit of a private person, and like I don't do every interview on the planet, and I don't, I'm not the kind of person that's like, hey, every day I'm doing a little Facebook Live thing because I want to let people into my life. I like to keep a little bit of that, with my privacy and my family life, right, for myself, right?
Well, for sure, and it seems to me that as you started your family and your kids were younger, that you really did keep it low key. Like you were out of the public eye for a while during this recent period of your life.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is I had this crazy idea that, because I put out Beautiful Things, which was my second jazz-infused album in 2004. And I toured across Canada 7 months pregnant. There's video out there, I'm huge. Like, and I had this crazy idea, well, I will just, have this baby, and then I will make this little baby fit into my life, and I will take this baby on tour. And, I just didn't really have a clue that it was going to upend my life so severely. And
right.
We had this baby that screamed all the way to Safeway in her car seat. And I was just like, I was a nervous wreck for the first year. And it was really a very big growing, personal growth period for me, because I realized within that first year that, being Lee-Erin means nothing. Being a mother is the most important role I'm ever going to have in my life. And we decided to have another baby right away. So my son was born 18 months later. And I really just laid low for about a decade, really, after my son was born. I did a few concerts here and there when my agent came and he said, you've got a big, I think it was 2006. My son was about 6 months old, but it was an opportunity to play a festival in Canada with Heart, some of my idols. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. But I just, I did a smattering of festivals here and there, but I didn't actually write a record or do any recording for a decade. I focused on my creative energy into being a mother.
Oh, beautiful. And they really do give you perspective on everything. Because I feel the same way. Like you're building things, you're an entrepreneur, you're, trying to, do this, that, the other. And that's important because, it helps you put food on the table and pay the mortgage and all these things that are key. But at the end of the day, as you said so eloquently, like it's how, creating well-adjusted adults out of your children is this is priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Like this is everything. So that's great that you have such perspective there.
Well, ironically, I've since gone, because our son had some learning issues, gone back to college and gotten a degree in special education. And the reality is between 0 and 7, if you don't do your job right, your kids are going to be messed up for life. And I really realized that later, and ironically, my son is now, our son, I'm sorry. My husband, John, is the drummer. He plays in my band.
Cool.
He's 14, almost 15 years old, and he's got a job at a local restaurant as a busser because he loves money because he can buy. He goes on Steam and he gets all his video game stuff, right?
Of course.
And but he comes home the other day. He goes, "Mom, I found $50 bill underneath the table, and I wasn't sure." I said, "I gave it to." Said turned it into the manager right away and I went, as much as I argue with him sometimes, and he's pig-headed, and he's a typical 14-year-old boy. I'm going, at that moment, I was just swelling with pride, like, yes, I have raised a decent human being. He just like found $50. He knew he had to give it in right away, and that's what you hope for, right? Like, to me, that's as big an accomplishment as having a gold record.
That's
even an honest person, right?
No, exactly. And that story is wonderful to hear because, that's my hope, is that, when my 18-year-old finds a $50 bill, he doesn't just sneak it in his pocket and say, yeah, I scored, I love the fact that what your son did there, because it just shows that's a good human being. That's a decent person. And you and your husband are responsible for that.
Well, yeah.
Good on you.
Yeah. But hey, you were saying when your kids grew treehouse.
Yeah.
I remember the first day. My children are now 14 and 16. The first day driving them both to high school, I was just like, this is like, when did this happen? It's so surreal, right?
Well, wait till one of them goes to university. Like that happened to me in September. Like my son's at Laurier. He's living in Waterloo.
Totally.
And it's a whole it's coming, Lee. Get ready. Brace yourself.
Well, my daughter, I've been pretty good being able to help them with almost all of their schoolwork because I've gone back to college and done some other things. But this year, my daughter's she's grade 11 pre-calculus. And I was just like, don't ask me at the last minute to help you study for your exam. Unless I'm following along with all these lessons, it's not going to happen this year.
Well, you're better than I am. I'm like, don't even try. I don't know what this company is. So good on you. I want to get to the Christmas stuff, so I'm going to just quick here. I want to just ask you about that moment in 1992. So you leave Attic Records, and we talked about that earlier in this program. And your own label, it's Hip Chic Music.
Hip Chick, yeah.
Oh.
Or Hip Chic, whatever you want.
I read it as Hip Chic. I feel like chick needs a K at the end. Am I crazy there? Hip Chick Music. Okay. And I also read a note, and just, you can speak this if you want, but there's a period in the mid 90s, I guess, where you don't want to play Metal Queen and you don't want to be Lee Aaron, and you become Karen again. It'll like speak to, and I never know how to say this title of this album, but Precious? What's it? How do you say that title?
Too Precious.
Too Precious. It's like, okay.
You need me to put the sun's beaming in on my face here. Do you want me to put my?
Oh no, only if it's bothering you. Like, it's not bothering me because I'm on.
It's like I have no nose, right?
No, it's okay. I'm not even gonna. Yeah, don't worry about the video because I'm just capturing the audio anyways. Don't worry about that.
Oh, is it just audio? Okay.
Yeah,
great.
it's just audio. I like to, peek in and see, make sure you haven't fallen asleep on me. I recorded once with Maestro Fresh West in my studio, and his eyes were closed for a long time, but he was answering my questions, and I was worried I had put the man to sleep, so I don't want to see a repeat here. So, okay. So one of the questions I have, actually specific questions, is from Adrian Strickland, who's a big fan of yours. And he wants to know, what was it like playing with the Sons of Freedom dudes?
It was great. The way that ended up coming about is that in 1994, when I was recording Emotional Rain, it was just an interesting time because John Albany, who had been my partner and co-writer for, not my romantic partner, but my musical partner and co-writer for 11 years, he was moving more into an area of production, and he was making noise about wanting to kind of leave the band and move to Nashville and start his own studio up. And so, and, the whole grunge movement, it was all simultaneously happening at the same time. The whole grunge thing started to happen.
Right.
And because I was still relatively quite young, I really embraced the grunge thing. I thought I loved Soundgarden and Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Green Day and all these bands that were coming out of that Seattle movement. And, I thought this was just another brand, like another way I could, sell my own brand again of rock, was just to incorporate a little bit of this sound into my own sound, because it was genuine inspiration for me. I really enjoyed it. And so I made this record, Emotional Rain, in '94 and I loved the Sons of Freedom, and they were one of my, out of that movement, one of the Canadian bands that I really adored. And just made some phone calls, and I asked the rhythm section, Don Binns and Don Short, if they wanted to fly to Toronto and play on my album. And they were totally game. So they came out for that album. I brought up Knox Chandler from the Psychedelic Furs from New York, because I wanted some different guitar tones and flavors on that album. And we made this really cool album called Emotional Rain. Out of that spawned a friendship with the Dons, the two Dons.
Right.
And they said, if you ever want to do something completely different, come to Vancouver, meet Don Harrison. And
another Don? How many Dons are there here?
They're all called Don. Sorry, those are my dogs. The dog alarm here.
Your dog's not named Don too.
I must be getting an Amazon package or something. Anyway, they said, if you ever want to do something completely different, come out to Vancouver. So in 1995, I decided that was a move I wanted to make. After Emotional Rain, and the reception was a bit lukewarm for that album. I felt a little angry, I have to be honest, at the media and the industry, because it was sort of like, no, you are part of the old school hair metal 80s rock. You are not allowed to continue into the 90s with a modern sound. And I'm going, God, like, I'm not even 30 yet. I'm still in my 20s. How is this possible that I can be dismissed at this point? So I felt a little very disenfranchised by that. And I basically sold everything except my guitar and went out to Vancouver and wrote an album with the Sons of Freedom.
So we lost you because of the Dons, essentially. The Dons are the reason that, we in the GTA lost Lee Aaron to Vancouver.
Yeah, it was a variety of factors, but yeah, I just thought, you know what? I wasn't so concerned with commercial success at that point.
Right.
I've made a lot of choices throughout the course of my career that were me choosing not to just toe the party line. I have made some creative decisions that some people thought maybe were career disaster. I did jazz. I did a jazz.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say, because there's this kind of just before the jazz era, if you will, of Lee Aaron, and then Evelyn Macco, who's a radio personality in this neck of the woods, who heard you were coming on, also wanted me to know you were trained opera as well. Like, you're not, we think of you as this hard rock gal, but you're far more eclectic than that.
Well, again, I went and made this kind of very, very alt rock record with Sons of Freedom called Too Precious. I'm still really proud of that record. I think it's some of the best writing that I ever did. And then I did a jazz, more of a pure jazz record in 2000. I did a more of a jazz hybrid kind of thing in 2004. In 2002, I was approached to be in a 12-tone Baroque opera. And I took that on as well. It's, so I've made some interesting choices, which, definitely took me out of, sorry, my dog, you're going to have to wait to go outside. Go away, go lay down. It's
okay. It's all part of
my dogs are bothering me to go outside right now.
Part of the pandemic charm. Tell your dogs we need just 10 minutes and then you'll be free to frolic.
But yeah, I people that are in the know, that know that I've done some of this stuff, I think that in a weird way, it's part of the reason that I still have a career today, is because people know that I'm not necessarily just a one-trick pony, right, that I am capable of doing other things. And, I'm also, kind of a little bit of an engineering geek lately too. I've, a lot of, I'm not, I can't twiddle all the knobs on an SSL, but, I can work in Logic. Not many people know that I've produced my last 5 albums, and that's sort of another thing that I very, very interested in. I mean, I've learned from the best people in the world, right? So, you know, and I think all of that stuff has made me a better writer, a better singer, an all-around better artist, because I'm able to draw on many more influences than just, you know, my Motley Crue and Led Zeppelin records, you know. So
I know, I hear you. Amazing. Now, what inspired the Christmas album? Tell me about Almost Christmas.
well, I have many people to thank for the Christmas album. You know, number one, Sean Kelly, my guitar player, phoned me up halfway through September. He says, you know, like, I'm bored, you know, and I'm like, I'm bored too. You know, what are we going to do? We've done a few Rockin' From Home videos. And he's like, let's make a Christmas album. Let's make that Christmas album we keep talking about. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. The problem is we really should have started earlier, but we were like, can we pull this off in 6 weeks? Can we do it? And we're like, okay, let's get to it. And then of course, my husband is a musicologist. He's got a record collection with, you know, thousands upon, like we have about 250,000 vinyl albums in our home.
What?
Yes.
How much space does that take up?
We have a man cave, which is
250,000 albums are in your husband's collection.
I'm sorry?
250,000 albums are in your husband's collection.
Yeah, and probably about 20,000 CDs and
wow,
I don't know, 10,000 classic films on DVD. Like it's when we're done, I could take the computer in there and show you the room. It's pretty insane. We moved into a house that had a helicopter garage. And then we blew that garage out another 1,000 square feet.
Oh.
And
wow.
It's now a music library / media room with a big, like a projection screen. And it's where we sort of, hang out as a family. So, but anyway, my husband has this immense library. The first thing I said to him was, I don't want to no one needs to hear Lee Aaron sing Silent Night again. No one needs to hear me do, you know, Holly Jolly Christmas, or, you know, I mean, these songs are done so many times, so many different ways by so many different artists. And yes, there's that Christmas charm because they're tunes with familiarity, but I figured if I was going to make a Christmas album, it had to be a cool little rock and roll Christmas record. Right. And so I spent a weekend with John just going through tunes until I landed on, you know, a curated selection of material that I felt this was the record I wanted to make. So I have John to thank for that because he had access to all this material. I did pick the songs, but right. And then yeah, you know, everyone did their part. We all recorded the tracks in our own. We all have pretty much the same setup in our homes for recording, and of course, my bass player, Dave, who's also a fantastic singer, I have to thank him because he came over to my house on a few occasions and we did all the background vocals together. And and then of course, the Wizard Kid, Frank Greiner. Frank Greiner, you can Google him. He's M. Greiner's brother.
I actually was about to say any relation to M. Greiner, who's a good friend of the show. Wow.
His brother,
wow.
They're an uber talented family. And I asked him when we first decided to do this, I said, look, we need somebody who's going to mix, master, do a video, put together, like he's put together all those composite Rockin' From Home videos for us and do the album artwork. And he's like a genius boy. He can do it all. He's amazing. And so I have him to thank. He did that.
Now, there's a Rockin' From Home video for It Doesn't Often Snow at Christmas, which people can literally watch right now at leeaaron.com. It's right there. Can I play a bit of that just before I ask you a couple more Christmas album questions here? Just
sure, absolutely.
be. Families fighting around a plastic tree. There's nothing on the TV that you'd want to see. And it's hardly ever snowing the way it's meant to be. Like in White Christmas, year after year, Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby, are you listening to me? It doesn't often snow at Christmas the way it's meant to do. But I'll still have a glow at Christmas because I'll be with you. The Christmas
It sounds fantastic.
was long ago,
And that's a Pet Shop Boys song.
It is.
Yeah, I didn't know that till I heard your version, and then I went back and then listened to Pet Shop Boys. But it sounds great. It's kind of amazing for someone like me who's not a musician to think that you guys are building this song more or less like virtually, like remotely, like someone's doing one part and then somebody puts it together. Like it just sounds fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Well, there were some challenges with doing it this way because, you know, we were like, okay, where do we start? You know, and, you know, my guitar player, I said, well, what if you cut some tracks to a click track, then you send it out here, and then I'll take it into John, and then I'll get it ready and I'll record the drum track. So I recorded drums here with John. Then I, you know, dumped all the tracks into my system. Then I put vocals on it. Then I sent it to Dave, and Dave added a bass track. Then he sent it back to me. Then we had everything. And then I said, now you need to come over, and now we need to sing background vocals. And as we were doing that, Sean was also adding a few extra guitar parts as well. And then when all of that was done, then the final step was when all the tracks were mostly done, then I sat down and listened to them all. And between Sean and I, we did all the keyboard parts on it, everything as well. So yeah, it was fun. Super.
Well done. Now, if somebody listening wants to hear more and purchase some more of some Almost Christmas, is it leeaaron.com where you'd like them to go?
Yes, well, for this year, because the album was just barely finished by the end of October, and then it went into manufacturing, like the actual album wasn't even, I wasn't able to pick up the actual discs from the manufacturer till like the 21st of November. And I'd already gotten a ton of pre-orders. We didn't have time to actually seek out a distribution deal this year.
Right.
So what we decided to do this year was, it's more of a gift for fans and friends. If you want the album, it's reasonably priced. You can just go to leeaaron.com, and we have fan packs and things available there. I think we are going to look for more widespread distribution for this album next Christmas, because when you make a Christmas album, it's evergreen. You can sell it every year, right?
Right.
But again, it was sort of a special gift for fans and friends this year. So leeaaron.com is where you can go to get that. But you can watch the video, and I believe that our the single, which is what you just played, it goes live on Spotify tomorrow.
Well, the timing's perfect here. And since we're now winding down, because I know your dogs need you, I do want to shout out to DJ Dream Doctor, who's a listener of the program, who just wanted to share with you, Lee, that he saw you at the Metal on Ice concert, and you were better than ever. He said you sounded amazing. So some nice words for you.
Well,
DJ Dream Doctor.
That's a great compliment. Thank you so much. It was a super fun project to do. That thing.
And here's hoping that this awful pandemic subsides at some point in 2021. Maybe we all get vaccinated and we can start doing some things together where we all collect, because I know a lot of your fans would love to see you live again. And I know all that is, on hold temporarily. So hopefully there's a point in 2021 when we could all collect and, listen to see you live.
That's the hardest thing I think about this pandemic. Well, besides obviously the industry being decimated right now and so much income loss for people. But someone asked me a couple of days ago, they said, they were talking to the gentleman that runs the El Macambo, and they're like, live streaming, that's going to be the future. And I'm like, do you think that could be the future? He asked me. I said, well, I think it's a temporary fix for the future,
Right.
but there's there's an exchange of energy that happens between a live audience and a performer, and that's absolutely 100% irreplaceable. We need live music, and I
Well,
can't wait till it comes back.
no, great point. I close every episode of Toronto Mic'd with a song from a local band, Lowest of the Low, that was on Shakespeare My Butt. And I love seeing them live whenever they play Toronto often, but they played the Horseshoe Tavern in a virtual show yesterday.
Okay.
And I actually I don't feel bad saying this because they're such good friends of the show and they know how much I love their music. And Ron Hawkins, I think it was his birthday yesterday of all things, but I simply don't. I love it live. Like I just love that energy you describe. I love being there with everybody. We're all singing along. We all know the lyrics. We're all like one with the artist. There's something magic that happens at a live musical event. I can't wait till it returns.
I 100. It's called your mirror neurons in your brain.
Oh, you're so
There's
smart.
like when you're feeding off a real human and you can make eye contact, there's something that happens in your brain that cannot happen with a screen. And I know this because I've studied a little brain science. So
Well.
there you go.
Lee, Aaron, thanks so much for spending time with me today. You gave me over an hour and I'm grateful. So thanks so much for this.
Hey, it was an absolute pleasure. Let's do it again sometime.
Oh, would love to. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
All right. Thanks, Lee. That was great. Did we miss anything? We're all good. Or
I don't know. That covered quite a bit of territory, I have to say. You did your research, so that's great.